Absurdism, embracing the void with a smile. Picture yourself standing in the middle of a vast desert at night. Above you, stars burn with ancient indifference. Around you, silence stretches endlessly. You whisper a question into the dark. What is my purpose? But the universe does not answer. It never has, and it never will. And yet, you keep asking. This is the essence of absurdism, the philosophy that confronts the fundamental contradiction of human existence. We crave meaning in a universe that offers none. It's a paradox, an unsolvable riddle. And yet, absurdism does not ask us to despair. Instead, it invites us to laugh. Absurdism was shaped by Albert Camus, a philosopher who refused to bow to nihilism. He saw the absurd not as a problem to be solved, but as a truth to be embraced. He argued that life is like knocking on a locked door, knowing no one is inside, yet continuing to knock anyway. Not because we expect an answer, but because the knocking itself is an act of defiance. So, what do we do with this absurd reality? Camus proposed 3 possible responses. First, denial. Some people turn to religion, ideology, or comforting illusions, convincing themselves that life has a grand, cosmic purpose. Camus called this philosophical suicide, not literal death, but the act of abandoning reason to cling to artificial meaning. Second, despair. Others look into the abyss and see only emptiness. They conclude that if life is meaningless, there is no reason to live. This is literal suicide, the final surrender to the void. But Camus rejected both paths and proposed a third option: rebellion. Instead of running or collapsing, he urged us to stare into the absurd and say, "I see you, and I choose to live anyway." Life has no inherent purpose? Good. That means we are free to create our own. The boulder will always roll back down. But what if we learn to enjoy the climb? Sisyphus and the smile. The most famous symbol of absurdism is the myth of Sisyphus. The gods condemn Sisyphus to an eternity of pushing a boulder up a mountain, only to watch it roll back down. Pointless, exhausting, endless. And yet, Camus imagines a moment of victory. Sisyphus standing at the top, watching the stone tumble once more. In that moment, he sees his fate for what it is, and he smiles. He does not curse the gods. He does not beg for meaning. He simply turns back down the mountain and begins again. He is free, not because he has conquered the absurd, but because he has embraced it. This is the heart of absurdism. We don't need meaning to live fully. We can love without purpose, create without legacy, laugh knowing the joke will end. Instead of seeking final answers, we learn to revel in the questions. How to live absurdly. 1. Reject false hope. Stop searching for grand, cosmic meaning. There is none, and that's okay. Instead, embrace the small meanings, the ones you create. A conversation, a song, a sunrise. None last forever, and that's what makes them precious. 2. Rebel joyfully. If nothing matters in the grand scheme, then everything matters in the moment. Savor a good meal, take an aimless walk, dance for no reason. The absurd life is not one of despair, but of play. 3. Accept the contradiction. The desire for meaning will never go away, but neither will the silence of the universe. Absurdism does not ask us to solve the problem. It asks us to live despite it. The universe will never answer, but that doesn't mean we have to stop asking. So we keep pushing the boulder, not because we must, but because we choose to. And maybe, just maybe, we learn to love the climb. Stoicism, the quiet wisdom of letting go. Imagine a warm afternoon in ancient Athens, over 2,300 years ago. The sun glints off marble temples, and the air hums with the chatter of philosophers, merchants, and sailors. On a shaded porch called the Stoa Poikile, a man named Zeno gathers a small crowd. His voice is calm, his words steady. Peace isn't found in avoiding storms. It's found in learning to stand still within them. Zeno wasn't always a teacher. Once he was a wealthy merchant sailing the Mediterranean. But a storm shattered his ship, leaving him stranded in Athens with nothing but the clothes on his back. Lost and penniless, he wandered into a bookstore where he discovered the teachings of Socrates, a man who faced death with humor and grace. Inspired, Zeno began sharing his own philosophy, Stoicism. Stoicism wasn't about suppressing emotions or pretending life was perfect. It was about finding calm by focusing on what we can shape, our thoughts, choices, and values, and letting go of what we can't, like the past, other people's opinions, or the whims of fate. The teachers, ordinary lives, extraordinary wisdom. Stoicism spread from Greece to Rome, touching lives in quiet, powerful ways. Epictetus, born into slavery, became one of Rome's greatest teachers. He taught that suffering comes not from events, but from our stories about them. Even in chains, he found freedom in his mind. Seneca, a writer and advisor to emperors, filled his letters with advice on facing fear. We suffer more in imagination than in reality, he wrote as he sipped tea in his modest garden. Marcus Aurelius, ruler of the Roman Empire, scribbled notes to himself during wars and plagues. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. These weren't saints or superheroes. They were humans, flawed, tired, and often unsure. But they shared a simple truth. Peace begins when we stop fighting what we can't change. The Stoic secret, the art of enough. Stoicism's core idea is gentle. Focus on what's yours to hold. Imagine you're a gardener. You can't control the rain, the bugs, or the frost. But you can choose which seeds to plant, how to care for them, and whether to savor the sun on your face. The Stoics called this the dichotomy of control, knowing the difference between your garden and the weather. A farmer in ancient Rome lived this truth. When drought scorched his fields, he didn't shake his fist at the sky. Instead, he saved his seeds, mended his tools, and waited. The art of living, Seneca wrote, is not about avoiding storms, but learning to dance in the rain, the willow and the storm, embracing life's waves. The Stoics had a phrase, amor fati, love your fate. It means accepting life as it comes, not as you wish it to be. Picture a willow tree in a storm. Its branches bend wildly, leaves trembling in the wind, but the trunk stays rooted, unshaken. The willow doesn't curse the storm, it rides it. Marcus Aurelius, who governed an empire plagued by war and disease, wrote, "The obstacle is the path." This is Stoic resilience, finding strength in surrender, light in the cracks, the cracked teacup, finding beauty in imperfection. The Stoics kept a skull on their desks, not to fear death, but to cherish life. Memento mori, remember, you must die, was a reminder to live fully, not frantically. Think of a grandmother's favorite teacup, its edges chipped and handle cracked. She doesn't hide its flaws. Instead, she smiles as she pours tea, tracing the cracks with her thumb. To her, those marks are proof the cup was loved, not forgotten. Stoicism teaches us to see life like that teacup, to embrace its imperfections, its fleeting moments, and the quiet joy of enough. Stoicism's quiet echo. Today, Stoicism isn't locked in history books. It lives in small, everyday moments. A parent staying calm when plans unravel. An athlete focusing on effort, not trophies. A nurse finding peace amid chaos. It's not about being unbreakable. Even Marcus Aurelius grumbled in his journal, "I'm so tired, but I must do what needs to be done." Seneca admitted he often failed to follow his own advice. But that's the heart of Stoicism. It's not about perfection. It's about showing up, breathing deeply, and choosing peace, one small moment at a time. The legacy of a shipwreck. Zeno's lost ship didn't sink his spirit. Instead, it sparked a philosophy that still whispers to us through the ages. Life's storms will come, but within us all is a quiet harbor, a place where thoughts slow, worries fade, and the soul finds rest. So tonight, as the stars glow softly, think of Zeno's painted porch. Think of the willow tree, bending but never breaking. Think of the farmer, patient in the drought. And remember, peace isn't a distant shore. It's the gentle art of letting go. Taoism, the art of flowing with life. Imagine a river. It doesn't struggle to carve its path through mountains. It doesn't rage against the rocks that block its way. Instead, it flows around, under, and over every obstacle, patient and unyielding in its gentle persistence. This is the essence of Taoism, an ancient Chinese philosophy that teaches us to move through life not by force, but by harmony. To understand Taoism is to learn the art of flowing, not fighting. Taoism begins with a simple yet profound idea, the Tao. The word Tao translates to the way, but it defies definition. The Tao Te Ching, Taoism's foundational text, opens with this paradox. The Tao that can be named is not the eternal Tao. The Tao is the unseen rhythm of the universe, the force behind the turning of seasons, the growth of trees, and the beating of your heart. It's not a god or a set of rules, but the natural order of existence itself. Trying to explain the Tao is like trying to catch the wind in your hands. You can't hold it, but you can feel it. Legend says the Tao Te Ching was written by Lao Tzu, an old sage who grew tired of humanity's endless striving. As he left civilization, a gatekeeper begged him to share his wisdom. Lao Tzu wrote 81 short poems, handed them over, and vanished. His message? Our suffering comes from resisting life's flow. We exhaust ourselves trying to control the uncontrollable, to label, conquer, and optimize every moment. But the Tao invites us to let go, to act without forcing. This brings us to Taoism's most famous principle, Wu Wei, or non-action. Don't mistake this for passivity. Wu Wei is action in harmony with the Tao. It's the effortless effort of a bird gliding on air, or a gardener tending plants without uprooting them. Think of a skilled dancer. They don't fight the music. Their movements arise spontaneously, as if the dance is dancing them. Wu Wei teaches us to trust intuition, act when the moment is right, and step back when struggle breeds chaos. Taoism embraces balance through yin and yang. Yin is the dark, quiet, receptive force, the moon, the valley, the pause between breaths. Yang is the bright, active, creative force, the sun, the mountain, the spark of action. Neither is superior. They intertwine like threads in a tapestry. Day needs night. Growth needs rest. A storm may destroy a tree, but it nourishes the soil. Taoism asks us to stop labeling things as good or bad and see them as parts of a whole. Simplicity is another pillar of Taoism. Lao Tzu wrote, "Be content with what you have. Rejoice in the way things are. When you realize there is nothing lacking, the whole world belongs to you." In a world obsessed with more, wealth, status, achievements, Taoism whispers, enough. A bowl's usefulness lies in its emptiness. A window's value is its open space. Taoism isn't about rejecting ambition, but finding freedom in letting go of excess. Taoism urges us to reconnect with nature. Modern life traps us in human-made rhythms, alarms, deadlines, screens. But the Tao is found in clouds drifting, rivers winding, and roots deepening into earth. Observe nature. Bamboo bends in a storm but doesn't break. A caterpillar becomes a butterfly without rushing. Nature doesn't argue with itself. A tree doesn't resent falling leaves. It knows they'll return. Critics ask, how can we go with the flow in a world of deadlines and plans? Taoism isn't rejection of action. It's a call to wise action. It's the difference between pushing a locked door and pausing to find the key. Prepare thoroughly for a presentation, then release anxiety about the outcome. Work hard, but know when to let ideas simmer. Effort matters, but forcing rarely brings lasting results. Taoism's legacy endures because it speaks a universal truth. Life is not a problem to be solved, but a dance to be joined. Its wisdom appears in Japanese ikigai, mindfulness practices, and modern psychology's focus on acceptance. When we stop fighting reality, we find energy we didn't know we had, like a swimmer who stops thrashing and discovers they can float. To practice Taoism, start small. Sit quietly and observe your breath, the Tao in you. When stress arises, ask, am I forcing this? Can I respond, not react? Walk in nature and see how life grows without strain. A flower doesn't shout to be seen, it simply blooms. Taoism reminds us we are not separate from the universe. We are the universe experiencing itself. The same force that guides the stars guides you. Trust it. Flow with it. When overwhelmed, return to the river. It never worries about reaching the sea. It trusts the journey, one bend at a time. The river knows the way. All you have to do is flow. Existentialism, the courage to create meaning. Picture yourself standing at a crossroads. No signs point the way. No map tells you where to go. The path ahead is yours to choose. Terrifying, exhilarating, utterly free. This is existentialism, a philosophy not of answers, but of questions. A call to confront the raw, unfiltered truth that life has no predetermined meaning and that we must create it. Let's wander this uncharted terrain together. Existentialism emerged in the 19th and 20th centuries, a response to a world shaken by war, industrialization, and fading religious certainty. Thinkers like Soren Kierkegaard, Friedrich Nietzsche, Jean-Paul Sartre, and Simone de Beauvoir dared to ask, if life has no inherent purpose, how do we keep from drowning in despair? Their answer? Embrace the abyss and build bridges across it. At its core, existentialism declares, existence precedes essence. Unlike a knife crafted for cutting or a clock designed to tell time, Humans aren't born with a predefined purpose. We exist first, and through our choices, we define who we are. You aren't a teacher or artist because destiny wills it. You become one through action. As Sartre wrote, we are our choices. But freedom is a double-edged sword. If nothing matters inherently, every decision carries weight. Choosing a career, ending a relationship, even pausing to help a stranger, each act shapes your essence. This burden of responsibility is what Sartre called the anguish of abandonment. There's no cosmic safety net, no divine script to blame. Yet existentialism argues this isn't a flaw, it's liberation. You are the artist of your life, and the canvas is blank. Existentialism also confronts the absurd, the clash between our hunger for meaning and a silent, indifferent universe. Albert Camus captured this in the myth of Sisyphus, where a man is cursed to eternally push a boulder up a mountain, only to watch it roll back down. Camus imagines Sisyphus smiling. Why? Because by embracing the futility, he robs it of power. The struggle itself becomes enough. Critics call existentialism bleak. After all, it strips away illusions. No fate, no karma, no cosmic plan. But existentialists see this as honesty, not nihilism. Nietzsche famously declared, God is dead, not to celebrate, but to urge us to wake up. If old myths have faded, we must invent new ones. As de Beauvoir argued, to will oneself free is also to will others free. Existentialism isn't selfish. It demands we build a world where everyone can forge their path. A key theme is authenticity. Society hands us roles: parent, worker, citizen. But existentialism asks, are you playing these parts out of habit or choosing them? A waiter who hates his job but stays for stability lives in bad faith. Sartre's term for self-deception. Authenticity means staring into the void and saying, even here, I choose. This philosophy also grapples with anxiety. Kierkegaard called it the dizziness of freedom, the vertigo we feel when we peer over the edge of possibility. But existentialism reframes anxiety not as a flaw, but a compass. That unease you feel when conforming to others' expectations? It's a signal, a reminder that you're alive, capable of more. So how do we practice existentialism today? Start by noticing where you've outsourced your choices. Do you chase a career because it's expected? Stay in a relationship out of inertia? Existentialism doesn't demand you burn your life down, only that you own your reasons. Ask, is this my choice, or am I sleepwalking? Another step, embrace uncertainty. Modern life sells us apps to optimize every minute, algorithms to predict our desires. But existentialism finds beauty in the unknown. Take a walk without a destination. Have a conversation without steering it. Let yourself dwell in the not knowing. As Rilke wrote, live the questions now. Finally, create meaning. It doesn't have to be grand. Bake bread and savor the warmth of the oven. Write a poem only you will read. Volunteer without posting about it. Existentialism isn't about finding a true self, but building a self, brick by brick, through small, deliberate acts. Some argue existentialism fuels narcissism, but its pioneers disagreed. Camus joined the French Resistance. De Beauvoir fought for women's rights. Sartre protested colonialism. For them, freedom wasn't a solo endeavor. It demanded solidarity. If your choices matter, so do everyone else's. So breathe into the uncertainty. Dare to choose without guarantees. And if the weight of freedom feels heavy, take heart. You're not alone. We're all wanderers here, carving meaning into the dark. Utilitarianism, the calculus of compassion. Imagine a candle pushing back the dark, offering warmth to all nearby. Now imagine 1,000 candles. This is utilitarianism, a philosophy that asks us to spread light where it reaches the most people, even if shadows linger. Let's explore the idea that the best actions create the greatest good for the greatest number. Born in the 18th century, utilitarianism rejected rigid moral codes. Thinkers like Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill proposed ethics could be measured by happiness and suffering. Bentham called it the felicific calculus, weighing actions by their consequences. The core is simple. Greatest happiness principle. Right acts promote joy. Wrong ones cause pain. Everyone counts equally. Your happiness matters no more than a stranger's. But simplicity hides complexity. A doctor with 1 dose of medicine and 10 patients might save the one who can recover fastest, freeing resources for others. A city planner could build a hospital in a slum over a wealthy area, prioritizing greater need. Utilitarianism is about tough choices, where numbers matter, but humanity isn't lost in the math. Mill refined Bentham's ideas, arguing happiness has quality, not just quantity. A poem's beauty, he said, outweighs a child's joy in a game, yet the goal remains: reduce suffering, elevate joy. Critics call it coldly logical. What if torturing one person saves thousands? Is killing one to save 5, the trolley problem, moral? Utilitarianism says yes. But would you pull the lever? Yet proponents argue it's deeply humane. Philosopher Peter Singer asks, if you'd save a drowning child, why not donate to save a child overseas? To utilitarians, empathy has no borders. It challenges personal bias. That extra slice of cake? Your joy might pale against someone's hunger. A luxury car's cost could vaccinate a village. This isn't guilt, but perspective. Small sacrifices can ripple into vast good. But how do we measure joy? Is a bird's song equal to a human's? Bentham argued, suffering is the measure. Can they suffer? Modern utilitarians extend this to debates over climate policy, animal rights, and AI ethics. In practice, utilitarianism shapes more than we realize. Public healthcare, disaster triage, traffic laws, stoplights inconvenience individuals to protect the collective. It's the logic behind vaccines and taxes, yet we rarely name it. Its strength is flexibility. During COVID, it guided ventilator allocation. In war, it might justify tragic choices to save lives. But this flexibility is also its weakness. The greater good can excuse horrors. Hiroshima's atomic bomb? Some call it war shortening, others unforgivable. So how do we practice utilitarianism without losing humanity? Start small. When deciding between work or a friend's birthday, donating or shopping, ask, which spreads the most warmth? Not just to you, but to all affected. Think in trade-offs. An hour scrolling could tutor a student. A $5 coffee buys a malaria net. As Singer says, if you can prevent harm without great sacrifice, it's wrong not to. But balance matters. Burn yourself out and you'll have no light left. Mill warned against self-sacrifice to misery. Sustainable compassion requires self-care. The true challenge is emotional. We're wired to prioritize ourselves and loved ones, yet every act of recycling, voting, or kindness to a stranger is a utilitarian win. You're adding your candle to the collective glow, In a fractured world, utilitarianism offers unity. We're all in this together. Your happiness is tied to mine. An injury to one is an injury to all. It's imperfect, but its North Star is noble. Alleviate suffering wherever it exists. So tonight, consider the candles. Some flicker brightly, others waver, but each holds back the dark. Nihilism, staring into the void. Imagine a world stripped of meaning. No grand purpose, no cosmic plan, no inherent morality, only existence, raw and indifferent. Some would call this terrifying, others liberating. This is nihilism, the philosophy that nothing holds intrinsic value. But does it leave us with despair, or does it free us to create our own meaning? Let's step into the abyss together. Nihilism isn't new. Its roots stretch back to ancient skepticism, but it took shape in the 19th century with thinkers like Friedrich Nietzsche, who declared, "God is dead." He didn't mean this as a victory cry, but as a warning. If traditional beliefs crumble, what's left to guide us? Without religion, without objective morality, without destiny, how do we live? At its core, nihilism rejects absolute truth. Moral nihilists argue that good and evil are illusions, human-made constructs without foundation. Epistemological nihilists doubt the very nature of knowledge itself. Existential nihilism, perhaps the most unsettling, claims life has no inherent purpose. The universe doesn't care. We are specks of dust floating in infinite nothingness. It sounds bleak, and it is. But Nietzsche feared something worse than nihilism, apathy. When old values collapse, we risk falling into the void, a state of paralysis where nothing matters, where people exist but do not truly live. He called this passive nihilism, a slow decay into meaninglessness. So what do? Nietzsche's answer wasn't to wallow, but to overcome. He spoke of the Übermensch, the individual who rises above the void and creates their own values. If meaning doesn't exist, then we must forge it ourselves. This isn't delusion, it's defiance. The abyss stares into us, and we stare back, unblinking. Albert Camus took a different path. He called the universe absurd. Humans crave meaning, but the cosmos remains silent. Yet, instead of despairing, Camus saw rebellion. He gave us the image of Sisyphus, forever rolling his boulder uphill. The task is meaningless, the struggle is endless. And yet, Camus imagines him smiling. In the act of struggle itself, Sisyphus finds meaning. This is the heart of active nihilism. If life has no purpose, we are free to create one. A painter finds meaning in brushstrokes, a scientist in discovery, a friend in laughter shared over coffee. The nihilist's freedom is absolute. We are bound by nothing except what we choose. But is this enough? Critics argue nihilism leads to hedonism or despair. If nothing matters, why not indulge every impulse? Why not give in to cruelty? Why build? Why love? Why strive? But this assumes meaning must be external, handed down by gods or fate. Nihilists argue the opposite. Meaning is personal, self-made. To help a stranger, to chase a dream, to create art, these acts matter because we choose them. Nihilism doesn't demand hopelessness, it demands honesty. No myths, no comforting lies, only the raw truth that we are alone in a vast, uncaring universe. But in this truth, we find power. There is no script, no destiny, only a blank page. And that means we hold the pen. So what now? First, embrace the void. Don't fear the absence of meaning. See it as a canvas. Ask yourself, if nothing is predetermined, what do I want to create? Second, reject passive nihilism. If nothing matters, then everything matters. Every action, every decision, every small moment holds the weight of choice. Even a meaningless universe cannot strip you of agency. Finally, live authentically. Not because of rules or expectations, but because you decide to. Make art, even if no one sees it. Love, even if nothing lasts. Laugh, even if the void is silent. Because in the end, nihilism isn't about despair. It's about staring into nothingness and daring to exist anyway. The void is vast. The meaning is yours. Hedonism, the pleasure and the price. You wake up to an alarm you didn't want to set. Another day, another grind. But what if life didn't have to be like this? What if instead of duty, discipline, and sacrifice, you just lived for what felt good? This is the heart of hedonism, the belief that pleasure is the highest good. It's an idea as old as humanity itself. From ancient Greek philosophers to modern self-help gurus, people have chased the same question. How do we maximize joy and minimize suffering? But here's the thing. Hedonism isn't as simple as just do what makes you happy, because pleasure, like everything else, comes at a cost. The reality of hedonism. The modern world sells pleasure everywhere. A swipe, a sip, a click. Instant gratification is within reach 24/7. We binge-watch shows, drown in dopamine hits from social media, chase highs through food, alcohol, shopping, or sex. Hedonism is no longer a philosophy, it's a business model, and we're all buying in. But what happens when pleasure becomes a trap? Not all pleasures are equal. The first bite of cake is delicious, but the fifth, the thrill of a casual fling fades. The high of success wears off. We chase the next hit, needing more to feel the same. Pleasure is addictive, and not all pleasures are worth it. The two faces of hedonism. There are two paths in hedonism. The short game, instant gratification. The rush of a sugar high. The thrill of impulsive spending. The buzz of alcohol or drugs. The mindless comfort of scrolling for hours. These pleasures feel great right now, but often leave us feeling worse later. What starts as fun can turn into dependency, burnout, or regret. The long game, sustainable pleasure. A strong, healthy body that feels good to live in. Deep relationships that bring lasting joy. Work that feels meaningful, not just profitable. Learning and growing, even when it's hard. These pleasures require effort. They don't always feel good in the moment, but they lead to a better life. The best hedonists balance both. The cost of chasing pleasure. Every pleasure has a price. Hedonism, if unchecked, can turn into self-destruction. Too much food becomes obesity. Too much sex becomes emptiness. Too much partying becomes addiction. Even too much comfort becomes boredom. Real hedonism isn't about drowning in pleasure. It's about mastering it. It's knowing when to indulge and when to stop. It's understanding that some pleasures aren't worth the pain they bring. How to be a realistic hedonist. Know your pleasures. Not all joy is equal. Learn which pleasures make your life richer and which leave you empty. Set limits. Indulgence is good, but discipline keeps pleasure from turning into suffering. Think long term. The best pleasures aren't the ones that burn bright and fade fast, but the ones that keep you happy tomorrow too. Accept the lows. Chasing pleasure non-stop makes happiness feel dull. Sometimes, a little struggle makes joy feel real. The hedonist's dilemma. Hedonism isn't just about pleasure. It's about knowing which pleasures are worth it. True happiness isn't just in chasing the next high. It's knowing when to enjoy, when to stop, and when to build something deeper. So the question isn't what makes me happy. The real question is, what kind of happiness is worth my time? Kantian ethics, the duty to do what's right. Imagine you're walking down a quiet street when you see someone drop their wallet. No one else is around. You could take the cash and walk away. No one would ever know. But something inside you hesitates. You feel an invisible force pulling you toward the right decision, even if no reward or punishment is involved. That force is duty. This is the heart of Kantian ethics, a moral philosophy built not on emotions, consequences, or personal gain, but on an unwavering commitment to doing what is right, no matter what. But how realistic is it? Does morality truly exist outside of human desire? Or is Kant's vision just another idealistic dream? The man behind the morality. Kantian ethics is named after Immanuel Kant, an 18th century German philosopher who believed morality wasn't about what feels good, like hedonism, or what creates the best outcome, like utilitarianism. Instead, he argued that ethics must be built on pure reason, an objective system of right and wrong that applies to everyone, everywhere, always. For Kant, moral laws weren't flexible or personal. They were universal duties that every rational person should follow, regardless of their own desires. You don't return the wallet because it makes you feel good. You don't return it because it will make the world a better place. You return it because it is the right thing to do. The categorical imperative, morality as a law. At the core of Kant's ethics is the categorical imperative, a test to determine whether an action is moral. It has 3 basic rules. Universalization, act only, according to rules that could be applied universally. Example, if you're considering lying, ask yourself, what if everyone lied all the time? Society would collapse, therefore lying is always wrong. Human dignity, treat people as ends, not means. Example, you shouldn't manipulate or exploit people for your own gain, even if it benefits you. Every person has intrinsic value and should never be used as a tool. Moral law, as duty. Do what is right simply because it is right. Example, you don't donate to charity because it makes you look good. You do it because helping others is inherently moral. For Kant, intentions matter more than consequences. A good action performed for selfish reasons is not truly moral. Likewise, even if telling the truth leads to disaster, honesty remains the correct choice. The harsh reality of Kantian ethics. Kant's vision of morality is pure, but is it realistic? The world is complicated, full of moral gray areas that his rigid system doesn't always address. No exceptions? If lying is always wrong, what about lying to protect someone's life? If a murderer asks where your friend is hiding, do you tell the truth? Kant would say yes, because truth is an absolute duty. But real life is messy, and sometimes morality isn't so simple. Emotions don't count. Kant believed that morality should be based on duty, not feelings. But what about kindness, empathy, or love? Are these just distractions? Most people feel that why we do something is just as important as what we do. Ignoring consequences, Kantian ethics says an action is right or wrong, regardless of the outcome. But if telling the truth leads to suffering, should we really ignore the consequences? Many argue that morality needs some flexibility to adapt to real-world dilemmas. how to apply Kantian ethics in real life. Even if Kant's system is rigid, it offers valuable lessons for everyday morality. Think beyond yourself. Morality isn't just about personal gain. Before making a decision, ask, would this be right if everyone did it? Respect others. People aren't objects to be used. Treat them with dignity, even when there's nothing in it for you. Do what's right, not what's easy. The moral path is often difficult, but Kant argues that true morality means choosing what is right, not what is convenient. The Kantian dilemma. Kant's ethics ask a simple yet profound question. What if everyone acted as I do? If morality is to mean anything, it must be universal, not based on personal benefit or shifting circumstances. But reality is complicated. Sometimes rules need bending. Sometimes emotions matter. And sometimes what is right isn't so clear. So, can we truly live by Kantian ethics? Or is morality always a battle between what we should do and what the world demands of us? Buddhism, the path to letting go. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack stuffed with every worry, regret, and frustration you've ever had. You trudge through life, weighed down by the past, anxious about the future. But then someone tells you, you don't have to carry this. You can let it go. This is the essence of Buddhism, not a religion of gods or commandments, but a path to liberation from suffering. It doesn't ask you to believe in something beyond yourself. Instead, it asks you to wake up, to see life for what it is, and to let go of what keeps you bound. But is it possible to truly detach from suffering in a world that demands so much from us? Can we find peace in chaos? Or is enlightenment just an unreachable dream? The Four Noble Truths, seeing reality as it is. Buddhism begins with a simple but profound observation. Life is suffering, not in a pessimistic way, but in an honest way. No one escapes pain, sickness, loss, disappointment. Even happiness is fleeting. We chase pleasure, but the moment we grasp it, it fades. This truth is the first step toward wisdom. The Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, summarized it in the Four Noble Truths. Suffering, dukkha, exists. Life is full of pain, loss, and impermanence. Even joy is temporary. Suffering has a cause. We suffer because we cling to desires, expectations, even our own identity. We want life to be stable, but reality is always changing. Suffering can end. If we stop clinging, we stop suffering. Freedom isn't about controlling life, but about accepting it. There is a path to liberation. The way out of suffering is through the Eightfold Path, a guide to living with wisdom, discipline, and mindfulness. The Eightfold Path, a guide to liberation. Buddhism doesn't promise instant enlightenment. Instead, it offers a practice, a way to live that reduces suffering and brings peace. The Eightfold Path is divided into 3 areas. 1. Wisdom, right view, right intention. See reality as it is, not as you wish it to be. Accept that everything changes. Set the right intentions, kindness, patience, and letting go instead of greed and anger. 2. Ethical conduct, right speech, right action, right livelihood. Speak honestly and without harm. Lies create suffering. Act with integrity. Avoid harming others, not because of rules, but because harm creates more suffering. Earn a living in a way that doesn't exploit or deceive. 3. Mental discipline, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. Train the mind. Watch your thoughts. Don't let anger or fear control you. Practice mindfulness. Fully experience each moment instead of getting lost in the past or future. Meditate. The mind is wild, but through practice, it can be calmed. The reality of letting go. Buddhism teaches detachment, but that doesn't mean apathy. It doesn't mean ignoring pain or rejecting joy. It means experiencing life fully without being owned by it. Love, but don't cling. Enjoy, but don't fear loss. But can we really do this? In a world of deadlines, responsibilities, and relationships, can we just let go? The truth is, we all practice detachment already. You've lost favorite objects, friends, even parts of your identity. And yet, you're still here. You adapted. You move forward. Buddhism teaches us to let go before suffering forces us to. Instead of gripping life tightly, we hold it gently, appreciating each moment while understanding that everything, including ourselves, will change. The middle way, balance, not extremes. Before becoming the Buddha, Siddhartha lived in luxury as a prince, then abandoned it all to become an ascetic, starving himself in search of wisdom. But neither extreme led to enlightenment. The answer, he realized, was the middle way, a life of balance, avoiding both indulgence and self-denial. Modern life is full of extremes, workaholism or escapism, indulgence or guilt, control or chaos. Buddhism reminds us that happiness is not found in excess, nor in deprivation, but in balance. How to practice Buddhism in daily life. Observe your attachments. What are you clinging to? An outcome, an identity, an expectation? Notice it and ask yourself, what would happen if I let this go? Be present. The past is gone. The future isn't real yet. All you have is now. Breathe deeply. Feel your surroundings. Live in this moment. Reduce harm. Speak with kindness. Act with integrity. And make choices that reduce suffering for yourself and others. Accept change. Nothing lasts forever. Instead of fearing this, embrace it. The impermanence of life is what makes it precious. Postmodernism, the age of questioning everything. The shifting sands of reality. Imagine walking through a city where nothing stays the same. Buildings appear solid, but when you touch them, they shimmer and change shape. Street signs contradict each other. Even the people you meet keep shifting identities, speaking in riddles, questioning everything you thought was true. This is the world of postmodernism, not a place, but a way of seeing, a lens that challenges the very foundations of knowledge, truth, and identity. But what does this really mean? Is postmodernism a philosophy of freedom, or just confusion dressed as wisdom? And in a world that seems more uncertain than ever, can it help us find clarity? What is postmodernism? Postmodernism is a reaction, a response to the certainty and order that came before it. Before postmodernism, the world was full of grand narratives, big stories that explained everything: religion, science, reason, progress. But postmodern thinkers asked, what if those stories aren't the whole truth? What if history isn't one clear narrative, but a collection of perspectives? What if reality is shaped not by facts, but by the way we interpret them? What if even our identities, our sense of self, are not fixed, but fluid? The world is a story we tell ourselves. French philosopher Jean-Francois Lyotard described postmodernism as the incredulity toward meta-narratives, a fancy way of saying, don't trust the big stories, think about it. For centuries, people believed in a clear hierarchy of truth. Governments told us how to live. Religions told us why we exist. Science told us how the world works. But postmodernism suggests that truth is more like a story we construct, shaped by language, culture, and power. For example, a history book may present events as a straightforward story, but whose perspective does it reflect? A news article may claim to be objective, but is it really free from bias? Even your own self, your identity, might not be as stable as you think. Are you the same person you were 5 years ago? Or do you change based on context, experiences, and the roles you play? Postmodernism doesn't say there's no truth. It just asks, who gets to decide what truth is? The illusion of certainty. One of the most unsettling ideas in postmodernism is that nothing is fixed, not meaning, not identity, not even reality itself. Jacques Derrida, another postmodern thinker, introduced the idea of deconstruction, the idea that words and concepts never have a single, fixed meaning. Take the word freedom. It means something different in a democracy than in a dictatorship. It means one thing to a child, another to an adult. And the more you analyze it, the more slippery it becomes. Postmodernism is like staring at a reflection in water. The harder you try to grasp it, the more it shifts and ripples. But is this uncertainty a problem? Or is it an opportunity? Living in a postmodern world, if nothing is certain, how do we live? Do we embrace the chaos? Or do we try to build something new? Here's the paradox. While postmodernism questions everything, it also frees us. If truth is not absolute, we are not trapped by old definitions. If identity is fluid, we are not confined by labels. If stories shape reality, we can tell new stories, ones that include voices that were once ignored. How to apply postmodernism in daily life? Postmodernism isn't just an abstract idea. It can change the way you see the world. Question assumptions. Before accepting something as true, ask, who is telling this story? What perspectives are missing? Embrace uncertainty. It's okay not to have all the answers. Let go of the need for certainty and stay open to new perspectives. Rewrite your own story. If identity isn't fixed, you don't have to be who society says you should be. You can redefine yourself. Look for hidden narratives. Seek out voices and perspectives that challenge mainstream stories, whether in history, politics, or media. The beauty of not knowing. Many people resist postmodernism because it seems unsettling, like pulling the rug out from under reality itself. But what if, instead of fearing uncertainty, we embraced it? What if not knowing was a kind of freedom? Postmodernism doesn't give us easy answers. But maybe that's the point. Maybe wisdom isn't about finding the one true story, but about learning to navigate the shifting sands of reality with curiosity, openness, and a willingness to explore. So the question isn't, what is true? The question is, who gets to decide? Pragmatism, the philosophy of what works. A world of action, not just ideas. Imagine you're lost in a dense forest. There are two guides. One pulls out a thick book, explaining theories about navigation. The other says, let's test different paths and see what works. Which guide do you follow? Most philosophies focus on what is true, seeking deep, abstract answers. But pragmatism asks a different question. What is useful? Truth, according to pragmatism, isn't some eternal, unchanging thing. It's something we discover through experience. If an idea works, it's true enough. If it fails, we discard it. But does this approach make us more adaptable, or does it risk making us too focused on the short term? What is pragmatism? Pragmatism began in the late 19th century with philosophers like Charles Peirce, William James, and John Dewey. They believed that ideas should be judged by their practical consequences, not just by logic or tradition. Instead of debating whether something is philosophically true, pragmatists ask, does this belief help us make better decisions? Does this method solve real-world problems? If an idea isn't working, can we change it? Pragmatism is not about what should be true, but what actually works. Truth is a tool, not a destination. Think about how we approach science. A scientific theory is only true as long as it predicts real-world results. If new evidence appears, we adjust or abandon the theory. Pragmatism applies this thinking to everything: morality, politics, education, even personal beliefs. It suggests that instead of clinging to rigid ideologies, we should continuously adapt. For example, in business, a company doesn't succeed by following a single philosophy. It adapts based on customer feedback and market trends. In relationships, healthy relationships aren't about proving who's right. They thrive when both people adjust and grow together. In personal growth, instead of asking, "Who am I?" ask, "What actions make me feel fulfilled?" Pragmatism teaches that certainty is an illusion. The world is always changing, and the best way to move forward is to experiment, observe, and adjust. A flexible mind is a strong mind. One of the most famous pragmatists, William James, argued that beliefs are tools. If a belief helps us live better, it has value. If it holds us back, we should rethink it. This is a powerful idea because it frees us from mental rigidity. It means you don't have to hold on to beliefs that no longer serve you. You don't need to fear change. You can adapt instead. You don't have to wait for the perfect answer. Just take the best step forward and adjust as needed, living a pragmatic life. So how do we apply pragmatism to everyday life? Test your beliefs. Ask yourself, are my beliefs helping me or limiting me? If something isn't working, be willing to adjust. Experiment with life. Instead of obsessing over decisions, take action. Learn from experience, not just theory. Be open to change. Don't cling to ideas just because they're comfortable. If something isn't effective, try a new approach. Solve problems. Don't just debate them. Pragmatism isn't about abstract arguments. It's about finding solutions that actually work, the beauty of not knowing. Many people seek absolute truth, but pragmatism reminds us that truth is always evolving. We don't need perfect answers. We just need good enough answers for now. In a world that constantly changes, the smartest people aren't the ones who know everything. They're the ones who know how to adapt. So next time you're faced with uncertainty, don't ask, "What is the perfect choice?" Ask, "What choice can I test right now?" That's pragmatism in action. Marxism, the philosophy of power and class struggle, the game of power. Imagine a world where the rich get richer, the poor struggle to survive, and the rules of the game are written by those who already hold power. Now, ask yourself, is that a coincidence or is it by design? For Karl Marx, this wasn't just an unfortunate reality, it was the very structure of society. He saw history as a constant battle, not between good and evil, but between the powerful and the powerless. Marxism isn't just about economics, it's a way of seeing the world. It challenges us to ask, who benefits from the system we live in? And can we change it? What is Marxism? At its core, Marxism is based on one simple idea: class struggle shapes history. Marx divided society into two main groups: the bourgeoisie, the wealthy elite who own businesses, factories, and land. They control the economy and therefore control society. The proletariat, the working class who sell their labor for wages. They do the work, but don't share in the wealth they create. Marx argued that capitalism is built on exploitation. The rich profit by paying workers less than their labor is worth. He called this the surplus value, the hidden gap between what workers produce and what they are actually paid. He believed that this system could not last forever. Sooner or later, the working class would wake up, unite, and demand a fairer system, the illusion of choice. Many people believe that if you work hard, you can succeed. But Marx asked, is that really true? If a handful of people own most of the wealth and resources, how much real opportunity is left for the rest of us? Marx argued that capitalism creates false hope. It makes us believe we are free while keeping us trapped in a system designed to benefit the few. This goes beyond money. The rich don't just control businesses, they control education, politics, and the media. They shape the ideas we grow up with. So we accept inequality as just the way things are. For example, when workers demand higher wages, they are told, be grateful you have a job. When corporations exploit people, they say, that's just how business works. When the poor struggle, they hear, work harder, as if effort alone determines success. Marx called this false consciousness, a way of thinking that prevents people from realizing they are being exploited. What would a fair society look like? Marx didn't just critique capitalism, he envisioned a new system. He believed that workers, not elites, should own and control businesses. Instead of competing for profits, people would work together for the common good. His ideas inspired communist revolutions in Russia, China, and beyond. But history has shown that while some Marxist-inspired societies improved conditions for workers, others led to oppression and authoritarianism. So, does Marxism still offer value today, or is it an outdated dream? Applying Marxist thinking to modern life. Even if you don't agree with Marxism entirely, it raises important questions. Who benefits? When you see a law, a policy, or a trend, ask, who gains power from this? Recognize systemic inequality. Not all problems are personal. Many are built into the system. Collective action matters. Change isn't just about individual effort. It's about people uniting to demand fairness. Marxism doesn't just offer an economic theory. It offers a lens to see the world. Whether or not you believe revolution is the answer, one thing is clear. Power isn't given. It's taken. Humanism, the power of humanity. A world without divine plans. What if there were no gods, no fate, and no cosmic meaning? Would life be empty and meaningless, or would it be ours to shape? This is the central question of humanism, a philosophy that puts people, not supernatural forces, at the center of meaning. It doesn't tell us that life has no purpose. Instead, it tells us that we create our own purpose. Imagine a world where morality isn't dictated by ancient texts, where progress isn't driven by divine intervention, and where the value of life isn't based on faith, but on our shared humanity. That is the world humanism envisions, one where reason, compassion, and human potential guide us toward a better future. But can a world without higher powers truly be meaningful? And how do we find purpose if the universe doesn't give it to us? What is humanism? Humanism has roots in the Renaissance and the Enlightenment. movements that emphasize the power of human reason and scientific inquiry. Instead of relying on religious doctrines, humanists focus on human reason. We should seek truth through logic, critical thinking, and evidence, rather than blind faith. Human dignity. Every person has value, not because of divine command, but because of their capacity for thought, emotion, and creativity. Human potential. We are not bound by fate. Through education, innovation, and ethical living, we can shape a better world. For humanists, meaning is not something handed down. It is something we create through our relationships, our actions, and our pursuit of knowledge. Life without a cosmic plan, freedom, or emptiness. For some, the idea that life has no divine purpose feels unsettling. If there's no grand plan, no afterlife, then does anything really matter? But humanists see this differently, not as a loss, but as liberation. If no God has assigned us a destiny, that means we are free to define our own path. We are responsible for our own choices. We are capable of shaping a world based on reason and empathy. Rather than looking to a higher power for morality, humanists believe that ethical values should be based on reducing suffering and increasing well-being. Kindness, fairness, and respect aren't moral because they're commanded by a God. They are moral because they create a better society. Humanism and the pursuit of knowledge. One of the greatest strengths of humanism is its belief in progress through knowledge. Instead of seeing truth as something revealed through scripture, humanists turn to science, philosophy, and critical thinking. This approach has led to some of humanity's greatest achievements. Medical advancements that have extended life expectancy, democracy and human rights that protect individual freedoms, scientific discoveries that have expanded our understanding of the universe. By trusting reason over superstition, humanism has helped shape a world where progress is not a gift from the heavens. It is a result of human effort. How to live a humanist life vs. life. So how do we apply humanist principles to daily life? Trust in reason and evidence. Base your beliefs on facts, not tradition or dogma. Be willing to change your mind when new information arises. Create your own meaning. Instead of searching for a divine purpose, build a life that feels meaningful to you through love, creativity, and self-discovery. Act with compassion. Morality isn't about obeying commands. It's about reducing harm and promoting happiness for yourself and others. Seek progress, not perfection. Humanists believe in improving the world step by step. Small acts of kindness, learning, and change add up. The humanist view on death and legacy. One of the most profound questions humanists face is what happens when we die. Without belief in an afterlife, is death the end? For humanists, what matters is not what comes after, but what we leave behind. If we live lives of kindness, curiosity, and creativity, then even after we are gone, our impact remains. Think of the artists, scientists, and teachers who have changed the world, not because they believed in an afterlife, but because they believed in the power of human potential. Humanism as a way of seeing the world. Humanism is more than just a rejection of religion. It is a celebration of humanity. It reminds us that we don't need divine commands to be good. We don't need a cosmic plan to live with purpose. And we don't need an afterlife to leave a lasting impact. We are not passengers in life. We are the authors of our own story. So the question is not, what is the meaning of life? But what meaning will you create? Cynicism. The art of letting go. The sun was warm on his face as he stretched out in the dirt, arms behind his head, eyes closed. Around him, the market square bustled, merchants shouting prices, philosophers debating ideas, politicians making promises. But Diogenes of Sinope paid no attention. He had no need for gold, no hunger for power, no desire to impress anyone. Unlike the others, he was truly free. It was then that Alexander the Great, the most powerful man in the world, approached him. The crowd fell silent. The young conqueror looked down at the old philosopher and said, "Diogenes, I have heard of you. You are a man of wisdom. Ask me for anything, and I shall give it to you." Diogenes cracked one eye open, barely glancing at the great king. "Move," he said, "you're blocking my sunlight." The people gasped. Alexander had conquered entire nations, commanded armies, held the fate of men in his hands. Yet here was this ragged philosopher, caring for none of it. Alexander laughed. "If I were not Alexander, I would wish to be Diogenes," he said before walking away. The moment captured the heart of cynicism, a philosophy not of bitterness, but of radical independence, a rejection of wealth, fame, and status in favor of self-sufficiency and truth. The philosophy of freedom. Cynicism began in ancient Greece, first developed by Antisthenes, a student of Socrates. But it was Diogenes who truly embodied it. The cynics believed that most human suffering came from false desires, the need for wealth, reputation, approval. Society, they argued, was built on illusion. People believed they needed fine clothes to be respected, riches to be happy, political power to be important. But what if none of that was true? What if happiness wasn't in having more, but in wanting less? Diogenes set out to prove this. He owned almost nothing, just a cloak, a stick, and a wooden bowl. One day, he saw a boy drinking from a river with his hands and realized even the bowl was unnecessary. He threw it away. He mocked those who lived their lives chasing power, calling them slaves to their own greed. He walked through the streets with a lantern in broad daylight, claiming to be looking for an honest man, exposing the hypocrisy of society. He saw most people as prisoners of their own illusions, too busy striving for things they didn't need to see the truth. Freedom lies in simplicity, breaking the chains of desire. Cynicism isn't about rejecting everything. It's about rejecting what isn't real. It asks us, are we working to live or living to work? Do we truly want success, or have we been taught to want it? Are we chasing happiness or running from our fears? In today's world, people spend their lives trapped by expectations, climbing corporate ladders, chasing approval on social media, buying things they don't need. But cynicism challenges us to stop and ask, what happens if we let go? A person who doesn't need money can't be bribed. A person who doesn't seek approval can't be controlled. A person who desires nothing is free. This doesn't mean living in poverty. It means not letting material things define us. It means speaking the truth, even when it's unpopular. It means simplifying life so that we own our desires, not the other way around. Virtue ethics, the art of becoming your best self. A young man once asked Aristotle, "How can I be good? Should I follow rules, seek pleasure, avoid pain?" Aristotle smiled. "Being good isn't about obeying rules," he said. "It's about becoming a good person. A man is not brave because he follows orders, but because he trains his soul to face fear. A man is not just because he avoids crime, but because his heart chooses fairness." This is virtue ethics, a philosophy that doesn't ask, "What should I do?" but rather, What kind of person should I become? What is virtue ethics? Unlike moral systems that focus on rules, deontology, or consequences, utilitarianism, virtue ethics is about character. Aristotle believed that the goal of life is eudaimonia, not just happiness, but flourishing, a deep sense of fulfillment that comes from living wisely. But how do we become virtuous? Aristotle taught that virtue is not something we are born with, it is something we develop through practice and habit. Just as a musician must rehearse to master an instrument, a person must repeatedly choose goodness to become truly good. The golden mean, the balance of virtue. Aristotle believed that every virtue lies between two extremes, not too little, not too much. He called this the golden mean. For example, courage is between cowardice, too little fear, and recklessness, too much fearlessness. Generosity is between stinginess, too little giving, and wastefulness, too much giving without thought. Patience is between passivity, enduring everything without action, and anger, reacting violently. A person becomes virtuous by practicing balance until it becomes second nature. A soldier who chooses to face danger instead of running away becomes courageous. A leader who makes fair decisions becomes just. A story of virtue in action. In a small Greek village, a young man named Theon was strong but quick-tempered, generous but reckless with money. He wished to be noble but struggled with his impulses. One day, he sought out a philosopher and asked, "Master, I wish to be great, but I make mistakes. How can I ever be wise or just?" The philosopher smiled. "Virtue is not something you are born with, Theon. It is something you grow into. Start small. Choose one moment today to be patient, one moment to be kind, one moment to be courageous. Each time you act with virtue, you take a step toward becoming virtuous." Theon took the lesson to heart. Each day, he practiced patience when anger arose. He gave generously, but with wisdom. He stood up for justice, even when it was difficult. Over time, he changed, not because he followed strict rules, but because he had trained his soul to seek the good, applying virtue ethics today. In modern life, we are often told what to do: follow the law, get good grades, succeed in a career. But virtue ethics asks a deeper question. Who are we becoming? Instead of asking, is this action right or wrong? Ask, is this action shaping me into a good person? Instead of asking, what is the easiest way to success? Ask, what kind of person do I want to be at the end of my life? We become virtuous through small choices. Choosing honesty when lying is easier. Choosing courage when fear tempts us to retreat. Choosing kindness when anger takes over. Virtue is not about perfection. It is about growth. It is about becoming someone who, over time, acts with wisdom, kindness, and strength, not because they are forced to, but because it has become part of who they are, the legacy of virtue ethics. Aristotle's ideas still shape leadership, psychology, and personal growth. His wisdom reminds us that ethics is not about following commands or calculating consequences. It is about shaping ourselves into the best version of who we can be. True happiness doesn't come from achievements or possessions, but from the virtues we cultivate and the lives we touch. Because in the end, a good life isn't measured by what we had, but by who we became. Solipsism, the uncertainty of reality. The rain tapped softly against the window as Elias sat in his chair, staring at the world outside. People hurried past, umbrellas raised, lost in their own lives. But a question gnawed at him, one he could never quite shake. How do I know any of this is real? It was not a childish question. It was not about ghosts or illusions. It was deeper. How could he be sure that anything existed outside of his own mind? He could feel the chair beneath him, hear the rain, see the world, but all of that was experienced through his own thoughts. What if nothing existed beyond his consciousness? What if everything, the streets, the people, even the sound of the rain, was simply a creation of his own mind? This is solipsism, the unsettling idea that the only thing you can be certain of is your own mind. What is solipsism? Solipsism is the belief that you can only be sure of your own consciousness. Everything else, other people, the external world, even time itself, could just be a product of your mind, like a dream that feels real until you wake up. The problem is simple but profound. We experience everything through our minds. Our senses can be deceived. We assume reality exists, but we cannot prove it beyond our perception. No matter how real the world seems, we can never step outside our own minds to confirm its existence. This leads to a haunting question. If all we ever know is our own thoughts, does anything else truly exist? The challenge of other minds. Even if the world is real, how do we know that other people are conscious? When you talk to a friend, you assume they have thoughts and feelings, just like you. But what if they are simply acting like they do? We cannot feel what others feel. We cannot see inside their minds. We assume they think as we do, but we can never be certain. A solipsist might argue that other people are no different from characters in a dream. They appear to be real, but they only exist within one's own perception. This idea is unsettling, yet impossible to disprove. A story of solipsism in action. A philosopher named Marcus once dedicated his life to studying reality. He debated with scholars, read every book he could find, and tested every theory. But one question continued to haunt him. What if I am the only conscious being? He tested his theory. He spoke to people and watched their reactions. He studied science and explored the world. Yet no matter how much he observed, he always returned to the same problem. Everything he knew was filtered through his own mind. He once stood in a crowd, watching people laugh and talk. They seem real, he thought. But does that prove anything? Marcus lived the rest of his life in a quiet kind of wonder, never quite able to accept reality as certain, but never able to dismiss it entirely. Can we escape solipsism? Solipsism is an idea that is impossible to prove or disprove, but most people reject it because practicality. Even if everything is an illusion, we must live as if it is real. Consistency. The world behaves in ways that suggest an external reality. Connection. Even if we can't prove others are conscious, we feel their emotions and experiences. Many philosophers argue that while solipsism is logically sound, it is unlivable. Whether reality is real or not, we must act as if it is. The legacy of solipsism. Solipsism forces us to question what we take for granted. It reminds us that reality is not as certain as we assume, that we are always trapped in our own minds, and that what we call truth is just a perception. So the next time you look around, pause for a moment and ask yourself, how do I know this is real? And then ask the harder question, does it even matter? Effective altruism, the art of doing the most good. James sat at his desk, scrolling through charity websites. He wanted to help. There were so many causes, so many people in need. He saw campaigns to feed the hungry, protect the environment, cure diseases, and rescue animals. But a question lingered in his mind. How could he make the biggest difference? If he donated $100, should it go to a food bank or to a disease research fund? If he volunteered, should he help at a local shelter or work on a global crisis? Was there a way to measure the best way to do good? This is the idea behind effective altruism, not just helping, but helping in the most impactful way possible. What is effective altruism? Effective altruism, EA, is a movement that combines compassion with reason to maximize the impact of charitable actions. Instead of simply following emotions when giving, EA asks, which cause saves or improves the most lives? Which interventions are cost-effective? How can resources be used most efficiently? Instead of donating based on what feels urgent, effective altruists use data, logic, and evidence to determine where help is needed most. For example, malaria nets save lives for about $5 per net, preventing deadly diseases in poor communities. Vitamin supplements can prevent malnutrition at an extremely low cost. Medical deworming programs dramatically improve the health and education of children in developing nations. Rather than focusing on who is suffering most visibly, EA focuses on where each dollar or hour of effort can have the greatest impact. A story of effective giving. Sophia had always wanted to help others. She donated to different charities whenever she could. But one day, she discovered effective altruism. She realized that while all charities do some good, some do far more with the same amount of money. She researched different organizations, looking at data instead of emotional appeals. She learned that a single donation to the Against Malaria Foundation could protect dozens of children, while the same amount given to an average hospital might only provide one additional treatment. Instead of donating randomly, she strategized her giving, focusing on organizations that saved the most lives per dollar. She realized that helping wisely meant helping more people. How effective altruism works. Effective altruists focus on three key ideas. Cause prioritization. Some causes save far more lives than others. Cost effectiveness. Some charities help thousands of people with the same amount of money that others use to help a few. Long-term impact. Some efforts create lasting change, while others provide only short-term relief. By thinking carefully about these factors, EA ensures that every dollar, every effort, every action makes the biggest difference possible. Applying effective altruism in everyday life. You don't need to be a billionaire to make a difference. Small, thoughtful actions can have a huge impact if done wisely. Research charities before donating. Some use funds 10x more effectively than others. Think beyond your local area. Helping globally can sometimes do far more good. Consider your career. Some jobs allow you to earn to give, where high salaries can fund life-saving causes. The goal is not just to do good, it's to do the most good. The legacy of effective altruism. Effective altruism changes the way we think about kindness. It reminds us that helping is not just about giving, it's about giving wisely. Because when we focus on where we can do the most good, our impact multiplies, saving more lives, reducing more suffering, and creating a better world for all. Libertarianism, the philosophy of freedom. The sun was setting as Daniel walked through the city, watching the world move around him. People were working, shopping, building, and creating, each individual following their own path, making their own choices. He thought about a simple question. What if everyone were free to live exactly as they wished, as long as they didn't harm others? This is the heart of libertarianism, a philosophy that values personal freedom, limited government, and voluntary cooperation. It asks, what happens when individuals, not governments, are trusted to shape their own lives? What is libertarianism? Libertarianism is the belief that individual liberty is the foundation of a just society. It argues that people should be free to live, work, trade, and associate as they choose, with minimal interference from the state. At its core, libertarianism is built on a simple principle, the non-aggression principle, NAP. No one has the right to use force, fraud, or coercion against another person or their property. This means governments should not control people's choices unless they harm others. People should be free to start businesses, make contracts, and trade freely. Individuals should have full control over their lives and bodies. Libertarians believe that peaceful cooperation is best achieved through voluntary actions, not through government control. A story of personal liberty. Emma grew up in a country with heavy government regulations. Every aspect of life, her job, her business, even her speech, was controlled by bureaucracy. Frustrated, she moved to a nation with more economic and social freedom. For the first time, she could choose her career, start a business, speak her mind, and make her own decisions. She saw firsthand that when people are free, creativity and progress flourish. This is the promise of libertarianism, a world where people are trusted to make their own choices without unnecessary interference. The role of government. Libertarians do not believe in anarchy. Some government is necessary, but its role should be limited to protecting individual rights, life, liberty, and property, enforcing contracts and justice, defending against force or fraud. Beyond that, libertarians believe that government interference often causes more harm than good, limiting innovation, creating corruption, and restricting freedom. Free markets and economic liberty. Libertarians believe free markets, where businesses and individuals trade voluntarily, lead to more prosperity than government-controlled economies. Innovation thrives when people are free to create. Competition lowers prices and improves quality. Wealth is created through voluntary exchange, not forced redistribution. Instead of government-run economies, libertarians support small businesses, entrepreneurship, and voluntary cooperation. Applying libertarianism to modern life, respect, freedom of speech, trade, and personal choices. Support voluntary charity over forced redistribution. Advocate for personal responsibility and self-reliance. Libertarianism teaches that society works best when individuals are free to pursue happiness on their own terms. The legacy of libertarianism. From the American Revolution to modern debates on free speech and markets, libertarian ideals have shaped societies around the world. It challenges us to ask, do we trust people to govern their own lives? Because when individuals are free, innovation, prosperity, and progress follow. Transcendentalism, the philosophy of self-reliance and inner truth. One morning, deep in the woods of Massachusetts, Henry David Thoreau stepped out of his small cabin by Walden Pond. The air was crisp, the water still, the only sound the wind rustling through the trees. He had come here not to escape life, but to truly live it, free from society's distractions, alone with nature and his own thoughts. To be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment, his friend Ralph Waldo Emerson once wrote. This was the essence of transcendentalism, a belief in self-reliance, individual intuition, and a deep connection to nature. Transcendentalists saw society as a prison, forcing people to conform. They believe truth is not found in books, governments, or religious institutions, but within each person's soul. What is transcendentalism? Transcendentalism emerged in 19th century America, inspired by philosophy, literature, and nature. It was a response to a world growing increasingly industrial and materialistic. At its core, Transcendentalism teaches self-reliance. True wisdom comes from trusting yourself, not following the crowd. Nature as a teacher. The natural world connects us to higher truths. Spiritual individualism. Religion should not come from institutions, but from personal experience. For transcendentalists, the soul was divine, and intuition was more powerful than logic or authority. A story of transcendental awakening. Nathan had spent his life following expectations, working tirelessly, seeking approval, ignoring his own dreams. One day, he took a trip to the mountains, away from schedules and noise. As he stood on a rocky ledge, looking out at the vast, untouched wilderness, he felt something shift inside him. For the first time, he realized how small his worries were, how disconnected he had been from himself. This moment, this direct connection to nature, was what the transcendentalists sought. In solitude, away from distractions, people could discover their true selves, living the transcendental life. Thoreau left the city to live simply in the woods. Emerson urged people to trust their instincts over society's expectations. They believed, material success is meaningless if you lose yourself. You don't need approval to live authentically. Nature is the key to understanding life's deepest truths. Even today, transcendentalism speaks to those who feel trapped by modern life, who long for simplicity, meaning, and a return to something real. Applying transcendentalism today, spend time in nature, disconnect from technology, and listen to the world around you. Think for yourself. Don't follow trends or beliefs blindly. Live simply. Happiness isn't in possessions, but in experiences and inner peace. In a world filled with distractions, transcendentalism reminds us to slow down, look inward, and trust our own path. The legacy of transcendentalism. From civil rights leaders to environmentalists, transcendentalist ideas have inspired generations. They challenge us to live boldly, think freely, and seek truth beyond what society tells us. Because in the end, the greatest wisdom is not found in books or laws, but within yourself. Objectivism, the philosophy of reason, individualism, and capitalism. A young architect named Howard Roark stood before a group of men who wanted to change his work. They asked him to alter his design to fit their standards, to compromise his vision for approval. He refused. "The question isn't who is going to let me," he said. "It's who is going to stop me." This scene, from Ayn Rand's novel, The Fountainhead, captures the essence of objectivism, a philosophy that champions reason, individualism, self-interest, and free markets. It argues that the highest moral purpose of life is to pursue one's own happiness, and that human progress thrives when people are free to think, create, and trade without interference. Rand believed that self-reliance, not sacrifice, leads to greatness, that people should live for themselves, not for the demands of others or society. What is objectivism? Objectivism is a philosophy developed by Ayn Rand in the 20th century. It is based on 4 core principles. Reality is objective. The world exists independently of our feelings or wishes. We must understand it through reason, not faith or emotions. Reason is the only path to knowledge. Logic and evidence should guide our decisions, not blind tradition or authority. Self-interest is a virtue. Acting in rational self-interest is moral. Helping others is not an obligation, but a personal choice. Capitalism is the only just system. A free market economy rewards innovation, ambition, and voluntary exchange, making it the fairest system for human progress. Rand rejected altruism, the idea that people should live for the sake of others. She believed that self-sacrifice leads to stagnation, while rational selfishness creates a world of progress, ambition, and achievement. A story of individualism. Sophia was an inventor. For years, she worked tirelessly to create a revolutionary new technology, but people pressured her to share her work for the greater good. She faced a choice: give up her vision to satisfy others, or stand firm in her belief that her creation was hers to shape. Like the characters in Rand's novels, she chose to pursue her own values, believing that her success would benefit society not through sacrifice, but through excellence. This is objectivism in action, the pursuit of one's highest potential, free from guilt, free from obligation, driven by reason and purpose. Objectivism and capitalism. Rand saw free market capitalism as the only system that allows individuals to think, create, and achieve without force or coercion. Entrepreneurs create wealth by offering value, not by taking from others. Success is earned, not granted by government or society. Innovation thrives when people are free to compete and pursue their own goals. For Rand, government should exist only to protect individual rights, not to control the economy, redistribute wealth, or enforce social duties. Applying objectivism to life. Think independently. Rely on reason, not blind faith or authority. Pursue personal achievement. Your happiness is your highest moral purpose. Reject guilt for success. Greatness is earned, not something to apologize for. Support free markets. Freedom leads to progress and prosperity. Rand's message was simple. Live for yourself. Think for yourself. Be proud of what you create. The legacy of objectivism. Ayn Rand's ideas have influenced business leaders, innovators, and thinkers who believe in self-determination and human potential. Her philosophy challenges us to reject conformity, embrace reason, and pursue excellence without compromise. Because in the end, the world is shaped not by those who follow, but by those who think for themselves. Confucianism, the philosophy of harmony and virtue. The young student knelt before the wise old teacher, asking, "Master, what is the key to a good life?" The teacher, Confucius, smiled and replied, "To put the world in order, we must first put our own lives in order. To put our lives in order, we must cultivate virtue. And to cultivate virtue, we must first understand ourselves." This simple yet profound idea is the heart of Confucianism, a philosophy that teaches order, morality, respect, and self-cultivation as the path to a harmonious society. What is Confucianism? Confucianism, founded by Confucius, 551 to 479 BCE, in ancient China, is a philosophy focused on personal virtue, social harmony, and moral responsibility. Unlike religions that seek salvation in the afterlife, Confucianism is about creating a just and orderly world here and now. It teaches that a strong society is built on ethical leadership, respect for others, and the fulfillment of one's roles and duties. Its central ideas revolve around Ren, humanity, kindness, and compassion. Treat others as you wish to be treated. Li, proper behavior, rituals, and social etiquette. Respect, traditions and societal roles. Xiao, filial piety, honor, and care for your family, especially parents and elders. Yi, righteousness and justice. Do what is right, even when it is difficult. Z, G, wisdom. Seek knowledge and act with good judgment. Confucius believed that if individuals cultivated virtue, society would naturally become harmonious. Moral character, not wealth or power, determines a person's worth. A story of Confucian wisdom. In a small village, a governor was known for ruling with cruelty. One day, a young scholar visited him and asked, "What is the purpose of leadership?" The governor laughed. "To control the people," he said. The scholar shook his head. "No," he replied. "A true leader is like the wind, and the people are like the grass. When the wind blows gently, the grass bends naturally. If you govern with kindness, the people will follow you willingly." This story reflects Confucius's belief that good leadership comes not from force, but from virtue. Confucianism and society. Confucianism teaches that a stable society depends on 5 key relationships: ruler and subject. A ruler must be just, and the people must be loyal. Parent and child. Parents provide guidance, and children show respect, filial piety. Husband and wife. Marriage is based on harmony and mutual duties. Older sibling and younger sibling. The elder should care for the younger, and the younger should respect the elder. Friend and friend. Friendship should be built on trust and integrity. When each person fulfills their role with virtue, peace follows. Applying Confucianism today. Though over 2,000 years old, Confucian teachings remain relevant. Respect elders and family. Strong relationships create a strong society. Lead by example. Whether at work or in life, act with integrity and fairness. Value education and wisdom. Learning is a lifelong pursuit. Seek harmony, not conflict. Cooperation is stronger than division. In a world full of disorder, Confucianism reminds us that true strength comes from virtue, and true leadership comes from moral character, the legacy of Confucianism. For centuries, Confucian values shaped China, Korea, Japan, and beyond. Even today, its emphasis on respect, duty, and education influences Eastern societies. Confucius's wisdom continues to inspire, reminding us that if we cultivate virtue in ourselves, we can create a better world for all. Determinism, the philosophy of fate and cause. The old man sat quietly, watching the river flow. A young traveler approached him and asked, "Master, do we control our own lives, or are we simply carried by the current of fate?" The old man smiled. He picked up a leaf and dropped it into the river. "Watch," he said. The leaf floated downstream, twisting and turning with the flow. Just as the river shapes the leaf's journey, so too are our lives shaped by forces beyond our control. This is the essence of determinism, the idea that every event, every decision, and every action is the result of prior causes. In this view, free will is an illusion. We are not the authors of our choices, but the products of everything that has come before. What is determinism? Determinism is the belief that everything that happens is determined by past events and natural laws. At its core, it argues that every action has a cause. Nothing happens randomly or by chance. If we knew all the causes, we could predict everything. Imagine a line of falling dominoes. Each one knocks down the next, following a chain of cause and effect. Determinists believe that our lives are like this. Every thought, every decision, and every event is simply another domino in the chain of reality. This idea has existed for centuries, debated by philosophers, scientists, and theologians alike. A story of fate and choice. In a small village, a young man named Elias was told by an oracle that he would become a great warrior. But Elias hated violence. Determined to change his fate, he left his village, swearing never to fight. Years later, his peaceful home was attacked. With no one else to defend it, Elias picked up a sword and led his people to victory. Despite all his efforts, he became exactly what the oracle had predicted. Elias believed he had chosen his own path. But was it ever truly his choice? Or had every event, his birth, his upbringing, his circumstances, pushed him toward this moment? Types of determinism. There are different forms of determinism, each offering a unique perspective on fate and choice. Causal determinism, the idea that every event is caused by prior events, governed by the laws of physics. Biological determinism suggests that genetics determine our behavior, intelligence, and personality. Theological determinism, belief that destiny is preordained by a divine power. Psychological determinism argues that our thoughts and choices are shaped by past experiences, upbringing, and mental conditioning. Each form challenges the idea that we are in control of our own lives. Can free will exist in a determined world? Determinism raises one of the greatest philosophical debates. If everything is determined, do we have free will? Some argue that free will is just an illusion. Our choices feel free, but they are shaped by genetics, environment, and past experiences. Others suggest compatibilism, the idea that we can still act freely even if our actions are determined. For example, you choose what to eat, but your preferences were shaped by childhood experiences. You choose a career, but your interests were influenced by your upbringing. You choose your beliefs, but they were formed by your culture and education. Perhaps we are free in some ways, but not as free as we like to believe, applying determinism to life. Even if our actions are determined, understanding determinism can change how we see the world. Less blame, more understanding. If people are shaped by causes beyond their control, should we judge them so harshly? Focus on conditions, not just choices. Instead of blaming individuals, we can improve environments that shape behavior. Accept the flow of life, like the leaf in the river. Perhaps peace comes from accepting the forces that guide us, the legacy of determinism. Determinism challenges our deepest assumptions about choice, morality, and responsibility. Whether we embrace it or reject it, it forces us to ask, are we truly free? Or are we simply playing out a script written by the past? Perhaps the real question is, if everything is determined, does it change how we choose to live? Rationalism, the philosophy of reason over perception. The philosopher sat quietly, gazing at the night sky. A student beside him asked, "Master, how do we know what is true?" The philosopher pointed at the stars. "Your eyes tell you they are small," he said, "but your mind, through reason, tells you they are vast. Which should you trust?" This is rationalism, the belief that reason, not just sensory experience, is the path to true knowledge. It teaches that the human mind, through logic and deduction, can understand the universe beyond what we see and feel. What is rationalism? Rationalism is the idea that truth is discovered through reason and intellect, rather than just observation. It argues that our senses can deceive us, but the mind has the power to uncover deeper realities. At its core, rationalism holds that the universe follows logical principles that can be understood through thought. Certain truths exist beyond experience, like mathematics or morality. Knowledge comes from reason, not just what we see, hear, or touch. Rationalists believe that some truths, such as mathematical principles, moral laws, and the nature of existence, are not learned from experience, but are instead in our ideas within us, a story of rational discovery. A long time ago, a young scholar named Marcus questioned the world around him. People told him that the sun revolved around the earth because they saw it rise and set each day. But Marcus doubted this. Instead of trusting his eyes, he studied the movements of the stars, used mathematics, and reasoned that the earth must orbit the sun. He had discovered truth not by seeing, but by thinking. This is the rationalist way, not accepting things at face value, but using the power of reason to uncover deeper truths. Famous rationalist thinkers. Some of history's greatest minds have championed rationalism. Plato, 427 to 347 BCE, argued that the physical world is just a shadow of a higher realm of perfect, unchanging ideas. René Descartes, 1596 to 1650, declared cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am, proving existence through reason alone. Baruch Spinoza, 1632 to 1677, believed that reality follows logical and mathematical laws, independent of personal experience. These thinkers shaped modern science, philosophy, and mathematics, proving that logic, not just observation, is the foundation of knowledge. Rationalism versus empiricism. Rationalism often contrasts with empiricism, which argues that all knowledge comes from experience. Rationalists believe that we are born with some knowledge, such as mathematical truths or logical principles. Empiricists, like John Locke and David Hume, argue that the mind starts as a blank slate and that all knowledge comes from sensory experience. Both views have shaped how we understand science, ethics, and the limits of human knowledge, applying rationalism today. In an age of misinformation, rationalism is more relevant than ever. Question appearance. Just because something looks or feels true doesn't mean it is. Use logic and critical thinking. Seek evidence, ask questions, and analyze deeply. Trust reason over emotion. Emotions can cloud judgment. Rational thought leads to clearer decisions. Rationalism teaches us that truth is not just what we see, but what we understand through reason. The legacy of rationalism. From scientific breakthroughs to philosophical insights, rationalism has shaped human progress. It reminds us that wisdom is not just found in experience, but in the power of the mind. Because in the end, the greatest tool we have is not just our senses, but our ability to think. Epicureanism, the philosophy of simple pleasures and lasting happiness. One evening, a man named Lycus sat under a vine-covered porch, enjoying a modest meal of bread, cheese, and olives. As the warm breeze passed through the garden, he smiled. His friend, a wealthy merchant, scoffed. "How can you be happy with so little?" Lycus chuckled. "My friend, happiness is not found in luxury, but in freedom from fear, pain, and excess desire." This is the essence of Epicureanism, a philosophy founded by Epicurus, 341 to 270 BCE, which teaches that the key to happiness is not indulgence, but living wisely, simply, and without unnecessary fear. What is Epicureanism? Epicureanism is often misunderstood as a philosophy of pleasure-seeking. But true Epicureanism is not about excess. It is about moderation, and peace of mind. Epicurus believes that happiness comes from three simple principles: ataraxia, peace of mind; freedom from anxiety, fear, and mental distress; aponia, absence of pain, a life free from unnecessary physical suffering; simple pleasures, finding joy in friendship, knowledge, and contentment rather than wealth or status. Epicurus argued that the greatest pleasure is not found in wealth or indulgence, but in a calm, self-sufficient life where one has few desires and many friends. A story of finding true happiness. A young nobleman, Darius, spent his life chasing wealth, feasts, and extravagant pleasures. Yet, despite all he had, he felt empty. One day, he visited an Epicurean philosopher who lived in a simple home filled with laughter and good conversation. The philosopher asked him, "Does your wealth bring you peace?" Darius hesitated. "It brings me distraction, but never peace." The philosopher smiled. "Then you do not need more. You need less." Darius learned that true pleasure is not found in more riches, but in removing unnecessary desires. He simplified his life and, for the first time, felt truly happy. Pleasure, but not excess. Epicurus taught that pleasure is the goal of life, but not all pleasures are equal. Natural and necessary pleasures, food, water, sleep, friendship, these bring happiness and sustain life. Natural but unnecessary pleasures, luxury, fine dining, entertainment, these are enjoyable but should not control us. Unnatural and unnecessary pleasures, fame, excessive wealth, status, these only create endless desires and lead to anxiety. Epicurus believed that once basic needs are met, additional pleasures bring little lasting joy. True happiness comes from being satisfied with what we have, freedom from fear. Epicurus taught that much of human misery comes from fear, especially fear of death and the gods. He argued, death is nothing to fear. When we are alive, death does not exist. When we are dead, we no longer exist. So why fear something we will never experience? The gods do not control our fate. They may exist, but they do not interfere in human affairs. By letting go of fear, we can focus on living fully in the present, applying Epicureanism today. In a world that constantly pushes us to want more, Epicureanism offers a refreshing alternative. Simplify your life. Happiness comes from needing less, not having more. Nurture deep friendships. Strong relationships bring more joy than any material possession. Let go of fear. Worrying about the future prevents you from enjoying the present. Epicurus reminds us that true wealth is not measured by what we have, but by what we can live happily without. The legacy of Epicureanism. For centuries, Epicurean wisdom has inspired those seeking happiness, simplicity, and inner peace. It challenges us to stop chasing endless desires and instead find joy in what is simple, lasting, and real. Because in the end, happiness isn't found in luxury. It's found in a life lived without fear, without excess, and in harmony with ourselves.